Hello, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. My name is David. I'm really pleased to be joined by Daniel Bianchini, who's the co-founder of Common Ground, and Shane O'Hare, Common Ground's head of digital. The format for today is Dan's going to introduce the concept of EEAT, why it matters, and how you can use it in your marketing to become the trusted authority in your niche on Google. As ever, Dan's presentation is jam-packed with actionable tips and tactics that you'll be able to implement yourselves. And to keep everybody engaged and on their toes throughout the webinar, we're going to be running some polls throughout. So I'm going to kick off the first poll now. And it's a really simple question, just yes or no. Hopefully you can all see that on your screen. And the question is, do you know what EEAT means? And whilst we're waiting for everyone to fill in their responses, Dan and Shane, I'll let you answer first, I think. In your experience of speaking with customers, speaking with prospects about SEO, what sort of results are you expecting to see from this audience?
I think it'll be a mixed bag based on the clients that I've spoken to. A lot of them seem to know what it is on a very basic level, but they don't know exactly what goes into it. But I assume is the general consensus. Yeah, all right. Dan, I don't know if you've got any different experiences there?
No, it's similar. Similar from my side, where depending on the type of business as well is the level of mastery around EAT and what they're actually looking to get from EAT and how to implement it. And I sort of touched upon that on a couple of slides within the presentation.
Brilliant. Well, both of you, your intuition is absolutely spot on. So I'll just end the poll there and share the results for everybody. And you're right, it's about 30% of people know what EEAT means, with the 70% who don't. But thank you everyone who's taken part there. And like I said, there will be a few more polls as we go on throughout the webinar. So we are going to have some time at the end to run through any questions that you may have. And with Shane being on the call, it's also a great opportunity for you to pick his brain, as he's someone who lives and breathes all things digital marketing every single day. So if you've got any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to type them into the Q&A section. It should be visible on the bottom of your screen. If it's particularly pertinent to a point that Dan's talking about as he's going through the presentation, it might be that we just address it then, but it might be that we address it at the end. Just a quick reminder for everyone, the webinar is being recorded. We'll send you a link to watch the recording and also to download a copy of the slide deck after the talk today. So I think that's enough from me. Dan, I know you've got a load to cover, so I'll bring you in now.
Cool, thank you very much. Let me just share my screen with everybody. Let me know when you're able to see.
Yeah, you can see that, thank you.
Perfect, okay, well thanks David. Hello and welcome. Today in the webinar, I'm going to be discussing how to master EAT for B2B companies and how to position your website as an authority on Google. Here we go. What I'm going to cover, and it's going to be a really quick introduction to me, because I mean I'm not the focal point here. We're going to cover what is EAT, then we're going to move into some common misconceptions about what I see, speaking to businesses, what people think EAT is and what it actually is in reality. I've done a bit of a review on 100+ websites, some of your websites for those that have attended the webinar, plus another 100 or so of websites from the industry to say what's gone well, what's gone badly. And then I provided some tips at the end on how to make your website the authority. And then finally with a Q&A. So just quickly, who am I? My name is Daniel Bianchini. I've been in digital marketing for 16+ years with a key focus around SEO. I've worked with hundreds of B2B digital marketing clients, and I've worked both in-house and as an agency practitioner and as an agency owner. In 2018, I founded Common Ground with Matt Taylor to essentially make the marketing world, the complex marketing world of digital simple by consistently delivering the 20% that matters to unlock business growth. Essentially, what we do is we drive leads via SEO and PPC. We've empowered and worked with a huge number of brands across the time that we've worked at Common Ground, and in my past, companies such as Cypher, through Thomas, Alfresco and Highland, just to name a few of the B2B brands that we've worked with and SEO on paid media and the like. As another bonus, and as David already indicated, I have Shane here with me to answer any of your questions. He is an expert in digital marketing with a key focus on the development of executing strategies that impact the bottom line. Shane will be here to answer any questions that you may have during the presentation, so feel free to ask away, and Shane will be there to get your answers. Okay, so now that that really quick introduction is out of the way, let's get into what you have come here to learn about. So the first thing that I really want to touch upon is actually, when we talk about authority, what do we mean? Now, I talk to businesses day in, day out, owners, I talk to marketers, and they all have a different understanding of what we mean when we talk about authority in the eyes of Google. Most people, and this is quite a stressful thing when I'm talking to them, because it's quite difficult for me to actually not smirk when I sort of have this conversation, because it's a consistent, ongoing conversation. But most people think of third-party metrics when we talk about authority. They've worked with tools such as Moz and domain authority. They've worked with tools such as Sistrix and the visibility index. They're using Hrefs and the domain rating, or even SEMrush's authority score. And because they're using these tools day in, day out, they assume that their authority score, their authority metrics is what Google are using. Sometimes, and this is one of the funniest things, is people reference PageRank. Now, PageRank is not a metric that's being used by Google in a visible capacity for quite some time. I was a lot younger then when we used to talk about PageRank, and you can use the little PageRank metric within the toolbar, but this is not what we've been using. And none of these metrics impact Google's rankings. They're just not used by Google at all. So the question then turns to, if these third-party metrics do not impact rankings, what does? And that's where I want to introduce EAT. And I'm not going to say EEAT every time. I'm just going to go with EAT, because I think that would, you understand what I'm trying to talk about here. But essentially, when we talk about authority within Google, this is the concept that we're talking about, EAT. Now, what is EAT? I hear you say, and obviously we've done a poll here today to show that it's a mixed bag in terms of understanding what EAT is. Now, EAT is a framework that is within the search quality guidelines that's focused on authority and the quality of content. The framework today consists of 4 key elements: your experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust, and are a key important consideration in the page quality rating. And I've taken this quote directly from the search quality guidelines that are available, and we've got a link to those later on in the slide, and I'll give you some more context around that. But what people seem to understand is, and not understand is, EAT is not a new concept. EAT's been around for roughly a decade, since roughly around 2013, 2014, when Google either leaked or allowed access to their search quality guidelines to provide a clear framework for the page quality raters to provide consistency when reviewing content based on the criteria given to them by Google. A kind of checklist, if you will, when it comes to reviewing content, to make sure that it touches upon all of the key factors that's within the EAT framework. Initially, the concept consisted of 3 core areas and became a focal point of the SEOs when creating and reviewing content. These key areas were expertise, so the way that you're able to demonstrate expertise through the website, through your core pages and your supplementary pages, and there is a distinct difference between the two, which I'll cover in a second. Then the authority, so to show signals that your brand is the go-to source for all information around a particular sector, particular product, or particular service that you're within. And finally, trust. And these are the signals to show that your brand essentially has the confidence for a user to make sure that your company is legit, and ensure that you can try and take that user from user to customer by providing them with the trust signals. Now, from the introduction of EAT, SEO started to use the terms, and you've probably heard these many times: main content, supplementary content, which then relates to educational content, informational content, navigational terms and things like that, all of the terminology that we as SEOs use, but that relate directly to the framework that Google talk about when we bring in EAT. And it's essentially a way to distinguish different content types. Now, when we talk main content, what we were considering here is your homepage, your about page, your survey product pages, the core pages that are on your website. Whereas when we talk about supplementary content, it's anything that essentially supports these pages, blog content, resource content, webinars like you're watching here, news information. That was all considered to be supplementary content and really enhances and gives you the authority and expertise and the ability to showcase what you know to the wider audience. So this was all released in 2014, but since 2014 through to about 2022, there wasn't a huge amount talked about by us SEOs about the EAT framework. However, in more recent years, Google has really focused on the quality of content that's being written, especially around YML focused websites. And affiliates have really seen a big hit because of that. That, along with the rise of AI, so I'm sure AI content is something that you guys are actually investigating, either doing, considering, or something like that. This has really sped up what Google are trying to do and focusing on the constant misinformation that is on the web. Well, just an example of misinformation, and you think of the recent coronavirus, and there was huge amounts of misinformation around vaccines, the virus itself, and lots of different things where people will essentially giving their opinions that may have not been medically correct. So in recent years and months, Google has updated the EAT framework to introduce a new E. That E is experience. So essentially what Google are telling us now is we need to show and provide examples of our experience of the product, service, or software within the content that we're creating. And if I just read the quote that I've taken directly from the search quality guidelines and what Google are looking for when their page quality raters are reviewing our content and our websites. So experience. Consider the extent to which the content creator has the necessary first-hand or life experience for the topic. Many types of pages are trustworthy and achieve their purpose well when created by a person with a wealth of personal experience. So essentially what we're trying to give here is provide your users with the experience that you have about the service product that you are talking about. Now, an example of where the addition of the EAT family has had a huge impact is, and it's a very simple example here, is within the affiliate marketing arena. And this is just a generalized example. There have been growing concerns over the past few years, and you may have been part of this, is that there was hundreds of thousands of websites, affiliate websites, that were essentially being created, writing content around products that impacted us as users, whether that's from a spending money, whether it's from a wealth point of view, whether it's from a finance point of view, without having any experience about the information that they're providing. So this led to the search engines and the search results being filled with lots of similar content from the hobbyist sort of site like me and you maybe want to create, through to a bit more of the authoritative site like the Wirecutter, etc., creating content without actually knowing anything about the product or the service, not having hands-on experience, but just taking information from the web and rewriting it. Now, I believe...
Sorry to interrupt whilst you're mid-flow there, Dan, but maybe when you get to the end of this section, we could run the next poll of if we've got a question that's relevant to this type of content.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to finish this one, if I may, I believe that the page quality were focused on affiliate content marketing based on terms such as best project management software. So I'm sure everybody in this room has at some point gone in and typed in best project management software, best hairdryer, best X, best Y. And what the results would have been is a huge number of affiliate sites that were overtaking really, really good branded service product sites. And I can give you an example of a client that we worked with within the HR space. And essentially, every time people put in best HR software, you get affiliate sites, you get your GTs, your Capterra, you get your other HR specific affiliate websites that were taking up those spots for best HR software. They then started to encroach on terms such as HR software. Now, that was a huge, huge issue for our client because they knew that anyone that came to their website using the term HR software were likely to convert into a client. That client would then generally sell the product for tens of thousands of pounds on a license over the year. So having that impact was a detriment to their business. And I think this is what essentially Experience was brought out for. So now the updated Venn diagram, if you will, includes experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust, and is essentially EEAT. So with the addition of experience, the SQR guidelines now focuses on ensuring that the page quality raters are focusing on assessing all of the criteria based on these 4 elements. And just to make it even more impactful, they've said trust is the most important factor within this family when we talk about here.
Thank you.
David, did you want to run the
Yeah, I was just going to say, so based on everything that Dan's just mentioned there, I'm just going to launch this poll. And the question for everyone this time is whether AI generated content can demonstrate EAT. Might be interesting, Shane, to bring you in at this point and get your views on this, because it's maybe a bit of a thorny, tricky subject.
It certainly is. I don't think it can at the moment. It certainly can't demonstrate experience. Expertise, I guess it depends which way you look at it. But I think where AI content is at the moment, I certainly don't think it can demonstrate it just yet. Yeah.
Well, it's split the audience. So I'll just end the poll there and share the results. But looks like 45% of people who've responded say, actually, yeah, you know what, AI generated content could demonstrate EAT, but a slight majority at this point say no, currently it can't. So again, thanks everyone for taking part in that. That was really, really interesting.
Okay, thank you. And so just moving on to onto this slides, I'm keen to get through these fairly quickly, but giving you the right information so we can get onto the actual activity that you can implement onto your website. Over the last few slides, I've talked quite a bit around the search quality guidelines and the raters that provide feedback to Google. So I want to give you a bit of insight about what I mean by this and how this impacts the content and your thoughts and how you should look at this when going forward. So EAT has come from the general guidelines. Now, as I mentioned, this was either leaked by Google or on purposely just published to ensure that people can understand what Google are looking for when it comes to creating content. Now, this 174-page guide provides you with all the information that you need to understand about building great content. The guide is referenced every time that an algorithm update is launched and somebody goes, oh my God, you've done this, you destroyed my website. They just reference you back to the same guidelines. Think EAT, think of the guidelines, review the guidelines, update, improve your content. Now, the guidelines are used by over 10,000 employees across the world. These employees are purely focused on reviewing content based on criteria provided by Google. And in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to show you that process and how that works. But within this document of the 174 pages, Google mentioned EAT and the content and the framework EAT over 150 times. So it shows the level of importance that they're putting on EAT as an authority. to understand actually how do we improve our content, how do we make sure that you and your website become the authority within your business and sector. Okay, so essentially what we're trying to look at here, essentially the raters are using the guidelines to determine high quality and low quality content. So within this document, and I recommend that you read them. You should definitely take a look. The links on the previous slide. So when you do download the slides, take a look at them. Within the document, they provide you with lots of examples of what they see as high quality content and low quality content. So you can then start to determine and sort of cross-reference versus your own content, how impactful, how insightful, how authoritative that you feel your website is. Okay, so if you take one thing from this whole webinar, please take a look at the guideline, grab yourself a cuppa, sit down and go through them, because one, you're going to need the tea, and two, it's a great read. So we talk about the process, and we talked about how what EAT means, and we've talked about how Google does this and what they're looking for. But this is the process that we would go through. Okay, so the SQRs, the page quality raters, the human will be provided with a criteria, whether that's a term such as best HR software, best product management software, best X, or just the term HR software or anything along those lines. They will go into the search engines and start to measure and assess the website quality of every single listing that Google has brought back for that particular term, and use the EAT framework to understand and measure how that would work. They then provide that feedback to Google, to the team, to analyze and spot any patterns that might help them determine the quality of each piece of content. Once identified, this is then fed back into the engineering team, who amend algorithms, try to identify things that would look into and correlate with EAT signals and the feedback provided with the SQR to try and understand the quality of content. Okay, this is then launched, and I think whilst there's hundreds, if not thousands, of algorithm updates, this sort of algorithm, like edit, update, if you like, will go into things such as the core algorithm, the helpful content updates, specific ones like that, not just the general tweaks that we'd see on a daily basis. And just one final point that I want to touch upon here, and something that you may or may not have come across is, it'd be great to actually know how many of you have come across the YMYL framework. So it's your money or your life. And just give me a +1 in the chat if you've got a few seconds. It'd be really interesting to see. But essentially, whilst working on your website, YMYL is a quality rating for content that stands for your money and your life. Google doesn't just care about delivering the most relevant information. They want to deliver the correct information. Okay, so when it comes to things such as happiness, such as health, such as wealth of us as people that would use the internet to buy services, buy products, spend money, they need to make sure that the quality of that content that's going to persuade us to part way with money, to make changes to our lifestyle, etc., is of importance, of authority, and hugely looked into by Google. So if your website is within any of these sectors, within the finance sector, the health sector, the wealth sector, and you offer services or products, your content is going to be held to an even higher standard when it comes to EAT. And you really need to focus on the absolute highest quality of content that you can produce. And despite the poll, my opinion is AI will not help you deliver that. Cool. Okay, so we've got the theory. What I want to do now is really just touch upon the misunderstandings around EAT. Often from those that are either working on the websites or working within marketing, there are a lot of information that they've read they've taken it in, not really understood it. So over the next slides, I wanted to talk about the 6 misconceptions and basically give you the reality of what that means. So the first misconception is EAT is an algorithm. This is not true, and the reality is it's essentially Google's algorithm looking for signals that correlate with good or bad EAT signals, and that's come through feedback that's been provided by the search quality rating guidelines and the page quality raters that have provided insight into what quality is. So that's a huge first misconception. The second misconception is that your website has an EAT score. Now, much like the previous slide, we talked about authority scores, Moz scores, etc., where there's a linear number from 0 to 100, and you can grow and build upon that. You can't do that with an EAT score. Okay, there is no EAT score. It's not used algorithmically. It's not used by the quality ratings. Therefore, you can't have this magical number that you're aiming for when it gets to EAT. That EAT is a direct ranking factor. That's another misconception. Okay, as I said earlier, it's just a component of the search quality rating guidelines. It gives you a framework to review your content, to build content around, but it's not a direct ranking factor. That you should focus on EAT instead of other SEO areas. Now, focusing on EAT is not a replacement for any marketing, SEO or otherwise. What EAT should be used for is incorporated into any activity that you do on the website, whether that's content creation, whether that's webinars, marketing, whatever that may be. You should just focus on building the very best quality content, utilizing the framework that Google provided in the search quality guidelines, and driving forward that way. So misconception 5, and we've touched upon this already, EAT's a recent change. It's come in within the last few weeks and months and such. That's just definitely not the case. As I indicated, it came in first in 2014. It's not changed a great deal since then, up until most recently, where we've added in the experience, and we've highlighted that in the previous slides. That is, this recent change is just an evolution, much like all the algorithms and the websites that we work on. It's something that we need to continue to fight against, and Google is really, really pushing around this fight against misinformation. Again, if you think about AI content, I think there's potential for misinformation to come through there. If you talk about the COVID, there's potential for misinformation there. And I think it will become really interesting over the coming years with upcoming elections and things like that, where Google really needs to fight the misinformation that may or may not come as we progress into the 2024. And the final misconception is a quick win. When we talk about SEO, the first thing I hear is, what's the quick wins? What things can we do today that's going to really increase our visibility? And it's just one of those words that just needs to go away. Okay, you can't just apply EAT to your website today and expect immediate results. It takes time. It's the same with SEO. It's the same with sales activity. It's the same with paid activity. It's just the same with marketing in general. What it is about building and continuing to satisfy Google's 4 pillars of the framework, and ensuring that your existing content hits and manages that. And then any new content that you create is also going to be applied with EAT, that you're constantly talking about the expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and you bring in the trust to the key areas. Cool. Okay, so at this point, what I did, and for this presentation specifically, as I mentioned earlier, I've reviewed 100+ B2B websites to try and determine which type of service is or business type used EAT well and which didn't. So for this, I've used some of the domains of people that have registered for the webinar. And I've also used some of the domains that we have from a client perspective, as well as just a stock number of domains that I track from rankings and stuff like that, just to see how things are going. There's a range of results, but based on the limited sample size, I've come out with a couple of thoughts. Now, what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to share company names. I'm not in the business of naming and shaming. But what I can say is, reviewing all of these websites, B2B companies that sell services seem to struggle more with EEAT than others. Now, it's clear that they're trying their best, but maybe they just feel that actually the website is not as important as it could be, or other industries and sectors feel it is. Some of the key takeaways that I see is there's just lack of reviews, hardly any testimonials within the companies that I talked about. There's limited content that shows their expertise. So whether you're a lawyer, whether you're solicitors, whether you're an accountant, there's limited expertise shown within supplementary content. It's all focused around main content and your services, but nothing else supports that to really build that topical relevance that you need as an authority. Apart from maybe the odd industry body here and there, there's no accreditations. How can we trust people if you're not prepared to showcase your accreditations? If you pass exams, if you pass tests, etc., be proud, show them, put them on the website. We don't see that much within services. Image quality is mainly stock imagery. And this is where we talk about intangibles, and that's a slide that I have later on, but stock imagery, there's no personalization, there's no branding. Some of that imagery as well is either stretched or is pixelated. The quality is not very good. It just feels like there's a general lack of care around the content, and that tends to be an afterthought. It's a generalization, I appreciate, but that's just some of the takeaways I took from the 100 or so websites that I looked into. However, on the flip side of that, SaaS companies fare a lot better when you look at EEAT. They have clean designs, they have a laser focus on their ICP. They're providing trust signals throughout the website, whether it's on homepage, blog content, resource guides, contact pages, pricing pages. It's everywhere to try and build that trust with their user and their ICP. They have a clear brand guidelines that are incorporated through everything. So you have the tone of voice, and that's clear throughout every page, homepage, about page, blog content. There's internal linking. It's really focused. Now, this could be the fact that SaaS is more of a growing market, and the services industry has been around for quite some time, and they probably moved into online, where the SaaS world has always been online. But that's just some of the real key things that I saw when I'm looking at B2B SaaS companies and B2B service-based companies. I mean, those are the key differences. I'd be really intrigued to understand and to hear your thoughts on this, and whether you see the same if you're in a SaaS company, and whether you think EAT is something that you specifically focus on, or whether you're in a service company and you're like, well, actually, I'm not too bothered around it. So it'd be great to hear some of that stuff in the comments in the chat. Okay, so I've spoken about what does Google mean by authority, how EAT has become EEAT. We touched upon YMYL, the misconceptions that we've gone through, and we've talked about the different services and implementation. So the rest of the presentation is why you're here. We're going to get focused on what you need to make your website the authority. Okay, so we're going to go back to those 4 pillars, and I'm going to go through each of those pillars to identify areas that you guys can implement particular elements to make sure that you're doing everything you can from an EEAT perspective, and to build an authority of your website within Google. Okay. So the first area that we're going to tackle is how to show expertise and experience when you're within existing and new content. Okay. But before we do that, just really quickly, just jump back to what Google rating guidelines are saying about the experience. So we need to consider the extent to which the content creator or the website has the necessary first-hand experience, life experience, and knowledge, skill for the topic. So the necessary first-hand experience and life experience, this is going to be all around how do we present your experience to the user and to the search engine from Google's perspective. And the necessary knowledge and skill is how we present your expertise to the user to the search engines and really get that across from a website perspective. So how do we do this? We're going to focus first around creating topical expertise. What I mean by topical expertise is if you are in HR and you are looking at HR and people management and that's your software, you're an expert in the entire topic of HR. So you can be creating content around payroll, staffing, reward, appraisal, evaluating, development, and motivating of staff, really specific and laser focused on the sector and the surrounding topics. What you don't want to be doing is starting to interact and sort of engage with content such as project management. That's not really related to the HR and people management type of area. There is that type of thing that we need to be really laser focused and start creating content that is all about your sector, your niche, and really focused around that. The way that we can do that is, and I'll give you some 3 examples, is firstly around keyword research. What are users searching for? So if are people searching for HR software, best payroll, how to run payroll on a monthly, all of these different types of things to determine what people are searching for and build out your keyword database. At the same time, we want to determine the search and intent behind that, so that when you do come to create content, you have the understanding that this term fits into this part of the funnel, and this is how we create the content. Competitor research, we need to understand what your competitors are doing. What are your direct competitors ranking for? And are those terms that you should be ranking for if you're not? And what content are they creating? Are they creating guides, blogs, webinars? I mean, things that you can really be utilizing and expanding your range of content and becoming that authority within the sector. And it's really good to understand also what's their cadence of content creation. Are they publishing content on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis, and how that all fits together. I think one thing that I see that's really is a missed opportunity is utilizing internal expertise. Now you have a sales team, you have a product management team that you can really go and speak to and sit down with and say, okay, what are the questions, if you're talking to sales, what are the questions that you're coming up against when you're trying to sell the product? What are the key things that we can answer to be put on the website and to really make ourselves an authority around this topic of HR people management? And that's a really key area to understand is, I mean, you need to be this authority. Okay, there's no point being an authority of every single topic. Be an authority of what you do, whether that is being a law firm around a particular area of law, whether it's accounting for SMEs versus global accountants, whether that is you're a B2B SaaS company in product management, HR, whatever that may be. Make sure that you're really focused on being that topical relevant. We then move into the content creation. So we know the areas that we're focusing on. We've done the keyword research. We've got our information from all of our product team, from our sales team, everything that we've just touched upon. It's now about understanding, okay, where does the content fit within my sales funnel, the marketing funnel, and how can I be that authority across every step? Now, people may never have come across your company first, but to show that you're an authority, you need to be displaying and demonstrating your expertise across that funnel, because it's not just focusing on the bottom of the funnel and trying to get that conversion. You need to build that authority, that trust throughout that buying cycle. And that just comes down to your keyword placement, the type of content you're going to create, whether it's expert guides, blogs, frequently asked questions, etc. It's really about making sure that you're available there when the user is required. This then falls into how you can diversify the content types. We at Common Ground and working with a number of our clients, we are really keen on diversification to make sure that when we're creating content, it's not just used once, but it can be used multiple times. Now, if we create a white paper, an e-guide, a blog post, we're always looking for opportunity to create that into a webinar, to create that into a newsletter, to create that into a case study, to create that into other factors that will really support and show to the users as well as Google that we are an authority in this space. It's also just good marketing to be able to actually have a holistic approach to your content creation. Now, we don't just create SEO content that people sort of talk about. It's not just optimized to rank, but it's great content that can be used anywhere within the marketing cycle. And that's something that we really stress when we work with our clients and things like that. Now, this thing is around social and content authorship. Now, this sort of approach sort of takes me back quite a few years now to Google Plus. And I'm not sure if any of you can remember Google's failed social media platform, where essentially what they were trying to understand is the author behind the content. And what they were indicating was you need to show your experience, your authority within the sector. So by creating a good author bio and then using that author bio across every piece of content you're creating, this is where we have to invest in the team that's writing our content. So if you have internal content writers and experienced marketers, then you want to invest in them. So let's get their author bio with really informative information such as social, external credits, whether they're writing on third-party sites, your specialisms, etc., and a nice author bio. And I've taken just Dr. Marie Haynes here as a really good example. On the flip side, the one that says not so good is essentially because it's just a name. And that name could be anybody. There's no sort of information around social activity. There's no information around where they contribute, what they specialize in, what opportunities they have, and things like that. So if I was looking at the two content authorship around the good and Dr. Marie Haynes versus by Luke, you'd always lean towards Dr. Marie Haynes being the authority in this particular sector. If you don't have expertise in-house, if you don't have somebody that you feel can be or is an expert within your sector, you can always go and leverage experts within the industry. So again, just taking the HR approach to this, if we was working with a client and they didn't have somebody that was a blogger or someone that was always out presenting at conferences, exhibitions, etc., we can go and build relationships with people that are actually within the industry, that are very active, and they're writing for industry articles and industry publication. The way that we do this is essentially go and identify the blogs, try to build a relationship. You don't want to go straight in there and say, oh, we want you to write for us. You just want to try and build a relationship. You want to try and understand their credentials, making sure they are the authority that you think they are, and then try to include them in a potential collaboration. Can you start by a white paper collaboration? Can you start by a guide or even a webinar collaboration where you get them on, you can talk about that conversation? And then as time goes past, you can start to get them more involved. They maybe blog on your site. They might blog on third-party sites on your behalf, things like that. So you're starting to leverage the industry experts that will provide you with being an expert and building that authority. Then there's things like schema. So I'm sure you're all aware of schema. You might not know how to implement it because it's through JSON coding, but essentially what we're trying to do here is tell a search engine what each piece of content is around. And the two key ones from a EAT perspective is organization schema and personal schema. Again, we're trying to show that the business is an authority, that the individual that's writing the content is an authority. So therefore, we need to tell a search engine, as clever as they are, they don't always know what the content is that we're talking about. So we need to give them context. And that's what schema does. Essentially, you're indicating that this is a company, they're within a particular sector, they've been going for a certain amount of time, they have X social media accounts, and it's really important that that's the focus, and something that you should be able to implement fairly quickly. I've dropped down a link to the schema.org organization. Take a look around schema.org. You'll find lots of schemas that you can implement. Do reach out if you need some help there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have around schema. I appreciate that. It's more of a technical side of the EAT framework. And this is something that we was discussing internally, and one of our clients has gone out of the box when they're thinking about their EAT. And essentially, instead of having comments at the bottom, they've asked the audience to rate how good the quality of their content is. what this is trying to indicate is that they can be an authority, or if it's not as good as they expect it to be, how can they update it? I mean, how can they make it as good as possible? It's out of the box. It's not specifically related to EAT, but it's out of the box. We're just trying to show something that's different to what everybody else is doing. So this type of thinking is something that I'd also recommend you look at. What else beyond the bits that I've talked about here about expertise and experience that you can implement that will help you drive forward the authoritative around the business? Okay, so now moving on to how do we establish yourself as an authority beyond your assets? Again, going back to the search quality guidelines, Google say, consider the extent to which the content creator or the website is known as the go-to source for the topic. Now, a lot of the stuff that we've just talked about in terms of content creation and authority, expertise building and experience building within the previous section apply to this area as well. But there's also factors where we talk about offsite and becoming that authority and being shown within the SERPs. Now, I'm assuming that you will know who Rand Fishkin is, but essentially what we're showing here is that we can become an authoritative by using the schema that I talked about and presenting your business, your expert, your individual within other places except just your website, essentially. So can we get onto third-party sites? Are we in the SERPs? Are we in presentations? Are we doing webinars, etc.? We need to become authority beyond just our domain and the assets that we can create. This includes being associated with other websites. This includes actually responding to journalist requests. Harrow is the term that we use in the industry, and I'm sure that you're all aware of. How can you spread your knowledge beyond just your website? And again, just taking that point back to the HR, can you get into some of those publications that I talked about where we want to go and leverage their expertise to bring it into your website? If you are the expert, if you're already there, can you take your information and put that onto the third-party sites? Are you participating in off-site activity? We do some conferences, we do exhibitions. I mean, it doesn't always have to be just online, because it will relate. It will come back to being online, because everyone comes back to being online. Everyone comes back to asking the same questions. But essentially what we're trying to achieve here is let's expand our world, expand where we are the expert in this sector. And just finally, on this particular sector, becoming an authority, you may have bad links in this case, okay? So you may be associated to brands and websites that ultimately is going to impact you negatively. Whilst Google has the algorithm and not necessarily penalizing every single link and URL, it's always key to just have a check. I mean, where are you getting links from? Are those websites providing you more harm than good? If they are providing you more harm, let's just take action. Let's either update the disavow file. Let's get in contact with that website and say, hey, appreciate the link, but can you just remove it? It's not something that we want to be associated with. Just really so that we've got some focus and things around that. Okay, I'm conscious of time, but there is only a few slides to go, so just bear with me. The last section is about trust. Now, within the sector, trust is the most important member of the family, because untrustworthy pages have a low E. No matter how experienced, how expert or authoritative you are, or you come across, if there is no trust factors, you're just going to fail in actually providing the information, your authority that you have. So the key things is trust starts with the homepage. And this is where, going back to my review of 100+ websites, is SaaS do very, very well. Okay, so here's an example of a SaaS website where you've got the product and you're talking about the service, the product they're offering, and that is a key part. That's the marketing message. But throughout the homepage, they're providing you lots of different trust signals, the benefits, who we've worked with, who uses the product, testimonials, reviews, all of this different stuff really makes the page stand out and provides you with trust that this company is legit. This company is really mean, has your best interests at heart. They're not just trying to market to you, but trying to show that they're an authority within this section. Beyond the homepage, you start to think about the About Us page. Now, I've spoken to countless of businesses that just put up an About Us page. Sometimes they don't even put an About Us page, and they sort of see it as, oh, what's the point? It's just, I don't need it. I mean, yes, I'll put a, I don't know, we were started in 2018, or, oh yeah, well, our address is X. But the About Us page is incredibly important to building trust with your users. It describes who the business is. It describes key members. You don't have to have the entire team, but the key members of that particular team. It allows you to show credentials and to show off things such as awards or testimonials. It gives you, or the user, a flavor of who the company is, their values. If you as a user is big into sustainability, and then the About Us page talks about sustainability, then you're sort of bringing that two together. It's that emotional connection. And it really gives you the opportunity to reinforce those customer reviews. And so don't neglect the About Us page, have a real focus, understand and clearly target this as an EAT opportunity. I've touched upon this before, testimonials, reviews, results. If you're trying to sell a service, sell a product, regardless of whether it is, for common ground, we're the same. We need to showcase the work that we've highlighted, the results that we've achieved, and the reviews that we have. So display reviews across the site, show your awards, use multiple review platforms. SAS use G2, GetApp, Capterra. You could be using things like Google Reviews, Trustpilot, and the like. Try to get your reviews, build it into your process. If you have a good good call with a service thing, can you do a review? If you win a case, if you're a lawyer, can you get a review? If you are doing computer IT and you've got a great service and doing things, can you get a review? All of these different things will really build your testimonials, the trustworthiness that you need to display then onto the website. Then we talk about accreditations and socials. This is a bit of a smaller part, and this is dependent on where you want to place these on the website. Now, Thomas, as an example, have used the footer to show their accreditations on every single page. You could do this on the home page, you could do this on the About page, but essentially what we're trying to do here is indicate who you are, what accreditations you have, and how important that is to you. And how important that is to me as a potential user and a potential buyer. There's things that we could really be doing. Social media is something that you can just show, like, what is it that we're tweeting about? Are you an authority? Are you an expertise? Are you talking about the information that you are promoting on site? And finally, as we bring the webinar to a close, content design and the intangibles. So some of the things that are going to be specific, they're going to be have a user's perspective. So design is one of those things. If you look at lots of sites and you look at lots of content, what you get is long form content with one image at the top and just blocks and blocks and blocks of content. Now, this is really bad from a UX perspective in one case, but also from a user's perspective. You want to be able to jump down, you want to be able to see branded imagery, you want to be branded used cases throughout the website. And I really like what Agency Analytics do here, and I provided a link. But essentially, the way that they work is they have tone of voice, they use table of contents, everything is branded, whether it's color in their tables, whether it's like a branded icon within their imagery, whether it's their quotes that they're adding. They're basically creating a journalistic approach to content creation, specifically around their resource section. And this is going to be the intangibles. I mean, how can you make your website, your content, the best it possibly can be, so that regardless of what search quality rater, person, user, website, whatever it may be, comes to your website, it is in the best possible condition to show your authority. Essentially, what you're trying to do is make your website trustworthy. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Dan. Thank you so much. I'm conscious of time, so I think everyone can breathe a sigh of relief that I'm not going to trigger any more polls for the audience, but we have got 5 minutes for some Q&A. We've had a few come through already, but whilst we're waiting for a few more to come through, what I'm just going to do, I'm going to pop into the chat a message with a link to our next webinar that's running in August, and it's going to be run by Shane, who's on the call today. Shane's going to be covering in this webinar it's a really interesting case study actually about a startup and how Common Ground were able to take them from really just starting their SEO journey, so kind of being nowhere on Google for the terms that really mattered to them, to being able to rank in position 3 for one of their most important terms within just 6 months. So if you can see the link in the chat, I recommend you sign up for that. It's going to be a brilliant webinar to attend. In terms of the questions, I'll start off with one it's not directly related to EAT, but I think it's worth covering anyway, because I think a few people might be struggling with this concept. But the question is along the lines of, if I have a blog on my own website, are we able to replicate that content on a partner site without it impacting our SEO? And Shane, because you've been sat nice and quietly throughout, we'll bring you in so you can contribute to this question, please.
Yeah. So it depends on why you want to do it, but essentially, if you're trying to lift a blog that's on your website and essentially copy it onto the partner website, then there's a risk of duplicate content there. So Google might look at the partner website and say, okay, well, this content is exactly the same as the original blog. And best case scenario, it will just ignore it, but worst case scenario, it might actually penalize the partner site for having that duplicate content on there. So if you're looking to drive traffic to the partner site through the blog, then it's probably not the best approach. If you just want to feature the blog content on the partner website so existing users to the site can view it, then you can do that, but you'd have to no index the content on the partner website.
Thank you very much. Another question about, will negative reviews on review sites hurt my SEO performance? Dan, do you want to run into that one?
Yeah, the simple answer is no. Every service product, whether it's e-com or B2B, is going to get negative reviews. Essentially, what you want to try and do is just establish the reasons why you got that negative and try to respond to that from a good customer service point of view, but it won't negatively impact your SEO.
Thank you. Shane, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I completely agree with Dan. I'd say the only outlier might be if you have 100 negative reviews and no positive reviews, it potentially could have some impact, but I mean, those cases are few and far between.
Then you've got bigger problems, right?
Indeed.
Cool. So Shane, going to, should the expert be somebody relevant to the industry or and role, or should it be the expertise? Should we try? The CEO.
For me or to Shane?
We'll start with Shane.
I'd say it should be whoever has the most experience in the business, and that could be the CEO, probably would be in most cases, but even if it's just a kind of mid-level manager or someone who's worked in the industry for some time, that's one way of demonstrating that expertise as well.
Yeah, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I'd agree. My only thought would be that it shouldn't solely fit with one person. Because if that person is no longer around for whatever particular reason, you want to spread the expertise across a number of different people. It also spreads the load of content creation and webinars and all of that stuff. And if you are the CEO and you're doing all of that, you've got a busy time as well as running your own business.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. We've just had another one come through. So question is, can you have more than a pillar page in an attempt to cover the main topic and the niche where we intend to, I think it then drops off. Let me just see if I can see more of that, where we intend to promote something. So apologies, it looks like the answer, or the question might have dropped off at the end, but I think it's really a question around the style of content that you might produce in order to demonstrate expertise. Does it have to be limited to pillar pages?
No, you want to show expertise across every page, essentially. So you obviously have your pillar page, and then you create all of your expertise there, but you also want the cluster content and supporting content that will then build into that particular pillar page. It should also be expertise, authoritative, basically any page that you create on your website, think of the EAT framework.
Thank you. And last one, because we're running out of time, and apologies if we've not got around to yours, but we'll respond afterwards by email. So the last question is, how can I get experts to produce content for my website? Shane, we'll start with you and then move on to Dan.
The first thing you can do is ask nicely, but 9 times out of 10, you need to give some sort of incentive. So what we tend to do when we try and get experts to work for some of our client sites is we'll offer them something in return. So we might offer to write a piece of content for their site, or feature them in a piece of our own content as well. So it's reciprocal, it's relationship building essentially. There has to be something in it for the person in order to get something from them, as is life.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, completely agree. I think I touched upon it earlier in the presentation. When you're looking to leverage experts that are not within the business, you need to build a relationship first and understand why would they want to do this? Are they going to get exposure, for example, by you promoting it to your newsletter or to put it on your socials and stuff like that? Is that one way that you can collaborate? Is it a case that you need to bring them on as a contractor that will help you supply the content? What is really key as part of the agreement is understanding that who owns this content. You need to own the content from a website, from a brand perspective, so that you are the owner and they're just collaboration.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dan, for your hugely informative presentation, and also thanks, Shane, for being on the call to share your expertise, and both of you for answering the questions. Thank you, everyone else, for joining this webinar today. Apologies if we've not got around to your questions. Like I said, we will respond by email and follow up with you after the webinar. So we will get back to answering questions that you had. For everyone else, we'll send you round a recording of the webinar and a link to download the slide deck so you can refer back to the Google Quality Rater Guidelines and start reading that over a cup of tea. But thank you very much. As you leave the webinar, there will be a short exit survey just asking for a bit of feedback, but it also will ask whether you'd like to receive a free SEO audit of your website from the experts at Common Ground. So if you would like to receive one and get some direction on where you should be focusing your efforts, just tick the box on the form as you leave, and someone will be in touch to get a time booked in. So thank you all for attending, and really hope to see you at our next webinar in August. Many thanks.